Nostalgia is a powerful thing. It is powerful enough that just the scent of new cut grass can drag you back to when you were a child competing in your first school sports day. The taste of certain foods brings back days spent in the kitchen sneakily tasting things while your mother cooks Sunday lunch. The feel of oil on your hands can bring back memories of working on old cars with your father, as he gives you some of the skills a man needs to get through life. The warm winter sun on your face can bring back memories of winters past when you had snowball fights with family members and Christmas was just around the corner. A dislocated finger reminds you of that time when you were stupid enough to jump off a wall with no idea what the landing looked like, and then dislocated your ankle. Of course, that could just be me. All sorts of things can bring on nostalgia, reminding you of times and people half forgotten, though still treasured in our very busy, hectic lives as we struggle from one disaster or triumph to the next. But before I get started, please consider subscribing, as that would really help me out, and if you like this content, give it a like. Okay, on with the vid. Nostalgia sells. In fact, it doesn't just sell, it is a cash cow. It makes so much money that small countries would kill for even a single figure percentage of what it brings in worldwide. And it works for everything, because the human mind can be relied upon to make connections between even such dissimilar things as seat cushion softness and various cinemas that you've been to. And all this, in the most roundabout way possible, brings me to movies. Great movies stand the test of time, and they keep you coming back for more. Even when you've seen Back to the Future 27 times, at some point you will say to yourself, I kind of feel like watching Back to the Future. A chance encounter with Alien on TV will have you wanting to watch Aliens. Finding your old saw-backed combat knife in the garage will probably give you a hankering to watch Rambo First Blood. If you find yourself walking through a wood, you may pick up a nice sword-length stick, and if you don't find yourself imagining that you are King Arthur fighting Mordred, that stick could easily be a lightsaber, and you could very well be a Jedi Knight fighting a Sith Lord, and so Star Wars comes to mind. Of course, men are remarkably infantile, and girls are generally a bit more grown up, but for those of my female audience who like a bit of sword and sorcery, they may pick up that stick and become Eowyn, defeating the Witch King of Angmar. And here comes The Lord of the Rings, a truly great book, and not a bad series of movies. Seeing a weirdo wandering around with a mullet will in all likelihood remind you of how great Lethal Weapon is. And before you know it, you're dusting off your old videos, hunting for what is probably the greatest buddy cop movie ever. And then realizing we live in the 21st century and you can just stream it straight to your TV. And let's not forget that if you happen to find your old fedora lying around in a cupboard, you can't help but want to watch Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark, a truly great movie. Or even Temple of Doom or The Last Crusade. Though the less said about the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull the better. Not that I own a fedora, of course, nor a jacket made by Wested leather, nor a whip, neither do I own a Mark 7 British gas mask bag. What do you mean I doth protest too much? Anyway, back to the subject. These movies have all spawned nostalgic sequels or remakes, and they always will, with the exception of Back to the Future, which cannot have a sequel due to its main star's health, though a reboot has been rumoured for years, and that reboot could happen, though the fandom is dead set against it, and rightly so. If only we could have gate-kept Disney out of Star Wars in the same way. That would have saved some serious heartache, and Luke Skywalker's legacy too. And all this brings me to Spider-Man No Way Home and the Matrix reconfigurations. Damn it, no. Misrepresentations? Whatever. The new one, where Neo has become pathetic and Keanu Reeves can't be bothered to cut his hair since John Wick is way more important, and the studio couldn't care less about telling a vaguely coherent story that doesn't suck harder than Paris Hilton making a home video. Is that reference too old? Oh well. As long as they think they're going to cash in. The difference between these two movies is like night and day. In Spider-Man No Way Home, you actually got the feeling that you were meant to care for these characters, who had been through so much in their lives, and who were given a second chance to make things right. Yes, the storyline that led to the events of the movie was so stupid that I actually had to defuse my brain before it exploded with incredulity. But that aside, it was done very well. There was growth in this movie. Our heroes resolved personal issues that were hugely important to their respective franchises, and were also moments that the fans were happy to see happen. We all wanted Doc Ock to be saved. We all knew how hard it was for Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man not to be able to save his best friend's father, Norman Osborn. And this movie rectifies that failing. And while I never cared much for the Lizard Man stuff in Garfield's Spider-Man movies, when he saved MJ from falling, I really felt for him, because it meant so much to him after he couldn't save Gwen Stacy. It was a quick moment, but it was extremely meaningful and poignant. And of course, there's the cameo by Charlie Fox's Daredevil, which was a moment that many of us fans of that exceptional series were very happy to see. It was another bit of nostalgia done right. In short, it was a well-made movie. Though I am for the most part a bit sick of superhero movies these days, because since Iron Man 2009 and Avengers 2012, Marvel has gotten progressively worse and worse, to the point where I am now watching simply to see if they suck as badly as my instincts are warning me, but also in the vague hope that maybe, just maybe, this one will be amazing. Okay, well amazing seems a bit of a stretch, but I'll settle for good. Even that may be asking a bit too much in this age of Woketron. Now many of you will be saying, Infinity War, or maybe Ragnarok. But neither of those were great movies. Ragnarok was a disaster that made the Hulk into a laughingstock and emasculated Thor. Infinity War was just so lackluster that I just wanted to leave, to walk out. I could feel the greasy sensation of Marvel Comics creeping onto the screen, and it made my blood run cold. And to top it off, I was very meh about the last two Spider-Man movies. So this Spider-Man movie was in for a rough ride with me. But I was pleasantly surprised, and the thing that saved this movie from being just like the others was nostalgia. I liked the first two Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. Sam Raimi really knocked those movies out of the park. Sadly, Sam Raimi's vision for the third installment of what was up until that point a great franchise went off the rails after the studio demanded the inclusion of Venom, a character that if not understood would be very difficult for a filmmaker to portray correctly. The story became convoluted and somewhat uninteresting. I have great respect for Sam Raimi. The Evil Dead franchise is an absolute classic. He is in fact the only reason I have even a slight hope for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, considering the direction Marvel has taken. But even he could not save the third installment. And while Homecoming and Far From Home were passable, they in no way matched up to Sam Raimi's first two movies, which left the third dangling by a thread. Luckily, it was a spider thread. See what I did there? Because spider silk is so strong. Sorry about that. Anyway, No Way Home was a very successful movie. And yes, so were the previous two, with Homecoming making $880 million, Far From Home making $1.1 billion, but they're dwarfed by No Way Home, which has made $1.7 billion so far. And that on top of all this COVID nonsense, where people have been scared to leave their houses for fear of being bitch-slapped by Kung Flu. And the reason this happened is simply because of nostalgia. That, and the fact that it wasn't tiresomely, sickeningly woke. I expect the Hollywood diversity agenda types have been racking their brains trying to figure out why this movie was so successful, when everything they make has been such a flop. I can hear the questions they ask themselves now, things like, why did they want to watch this movie about boring straight white men saving the world and helping each other? What could they possibly enjoy here that they didn't enjoy when we made Terminator Dark Fate. We even got Arnie back to play that horrible white male robot thing. We rebooted Ghostbusters and we managed to get a couple of the original cast to do pointless cameos. We even got Chris Hemsworth to be in it, and he played some big green guy or with wings or on his hat or something in a Marvel movie, so it should have done great. And then they'll no doubt comfort themselves by reminiscing about how well the Star Wars sequel trilogy did. And they would be right. Star Wars, the sellout years, did very well. They made between $1 and $1.5 billion pure profit. But that figure belies the truth, which is that it was diminishing returns. The fans were fooled into going to see The Force Awakens because they were tricked into thinking the original cast's return would bring the wonderful nostalgia of that great first trilogy, having Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, C-3PO and Lando all together again. It was a dream come true for the fans. But that dream would turn to a nightmare as they realised that this wasn't Star Wars. This was just a corporate, soulless cash grab. The gang didn't get back together. That was a pipe dream, and not something that this woke generation of filmmakers cared about. It was just another marketing ploy. They killed off Han in The Force Awakens, and the less said about The Last Jedi the better. And let's not forget how unbelievably stupid and brain-meltingly dumb Rise of Skywalker was. And this again brings me back to The Matrix Regurgitations, a movie that has no reason to exist since nobody asked for it, and the franchise itself had clearly burned itself out by the end of the third movie. But Hollywood loves nothing better than to flog the proverbial dead horse in the hope that, like a gruesome pinata, money will fall from the corpse. Not to mention the fact that both Trinity and Neo had died. How could they bring them back? And there's no Matrix movie without them. Well, they solved that problem by simply having the machines bring them back to life because that solves the problem. No particular explanation needed. And from there on, they hoped that nostalgia and familiarity would fill the space that great stories and interesting characters had vacated. But in this case, nostalgia failed, because while nostalgia is extraordinarily powerful, it has to be used the right way. And one way that is sure to fail is to undermine the original movie that your sequel is based on before your cash-in movie has even been released. Claiming that the original Matrix was some sort of trans allegory years before the directors even decided to come out as trans was not going to do your sequel any favours, and trying to retcon famous scenes that became culturally important was also a surefire way to put off your audience. In short, the Matrix regurgitations, resuscitations, reenactments, misinformations did everything wrong and ended up managing to negate its inherent nostalgic goodwill. Also, it didn't help that the movie was crap. The scene of Keanu Reeves sitting on the toilet looking forlorn summed it up for me. But does this failure mean that Hollywood will stop trying to sell us watered down, subverted versions of the things we loved, and instead make the effort to understand the franchise and its fans before they, in the words of the woke, diversify it? Hell no! In fact, they love nothing more than to get our hopes up and then with a sneer smash them into the ground and grind the pieces under their heels, all the while laughing and saying, "What's wrong? Why are you so upset? We gave you what you wanted, didn't we?" It is callous, deliberate and calculated. And as if we needed any more proof after these last few years, here comes something that we have all waited for with anticipation. Sorry, did I say anticipation? I meant apprehension. The Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power. That foreboding feeling you had in the pit of your stomach that Hollywood was going to ignore Tolkien's well-written and extensive lore, and instead replace, recreate, and repurpose characters and stories to suit their own woke agenda, has been made a reality. And while the power of nostalgia is strong, it has to be coupled with things that are identifiably that thing. Only people who have never read the books or watched Peter Jackson's movies are going to look at this and think, "Yay, more of Middle-earth, I can't wait," if they know what Middle-earth is. It is a sad indictment on modern entertainment that the studios have become so racist and intolerant that they can't stand for something to exist in its unadulterated original form. Instead, everything has to resemble their own political leanings and match how they would like to see things, which in the case of Tolkien's work means that it no longer resembles the world he created. And yet, if these people really did want diversity, Tolkien's work has it in spades. In fact, it has it in whatever measurements this thing can dig. Of course, we all know that it's the colour of the races that they care about, not the races themselves. After all, the fact that the Ents resemble different types of tree will be of no interest to them, whereas the fact that the elves are fair of skin and beautiful no doubt irks them beyond all rational thought. 2020 was a shit show. 2021 was even worse. And as far as I can see, 2022 is looking like a whole new level of hell. Dante said there were 9, but I think the list needs an update. Will Hollywood get over itself and start making things that people want to watch? Of course not. Instead, they will continue to debase and defile old properties in the hopes that they can have their cake and eat it. But the cake is full of maggots, and that's not chocolate you're seeing. This has been Movies Suck, as ever, hoping for the best, but knowing that reality can be a bitch. Oh, and you ever heard of Miles Morales? No? Stay tuned. Signing out. Leave a like, share, subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the flip side.